I'd like to do first is to just give a very brief introduction to all the ministers. You know, I'm not going to be able to do it justice, and for sake of time, I want to keep it very brief, but I also don't want to ignore the very impressive credentials that each minister has. So Cheryl has posted in the chat a written form of each of their bios, so you can certainly refer to them. But just very briefly, first of all, Reverend Ron Miyamura, who is the resident minister of the Midos Buddhist Temple in Chicago, and he has been minister since 1973. So of course, before I was born. And he served at the Midos Buddhist Temple until 1981, which then he went into private industry. But during that time of his absence, he also served our Twin Cities Sangha, so never really fully left the ministry. And then back in 2010, 2011, became Midos Buddhist Temple's full-time resident minister again. So thank you, Reverend Ron, for participating. Reverend Patty Nakai is the resident minister of the Buddhist Temple of Chicago, the temple that was founded by Reverend Kubose. Reverend Nakai was born in Chicago, but her family moved to Minneapolis, the Twin Cities area, and she graduated from the University of Minnesota. So we do our best to try to claim her as one of our own as well. And she's ordained in the Higashi Honganji tradition. Moved back to Chicago in 1995, being associate minister with the Buddhist Temple of Chicago, but then became full-time resident minister back in 2013. So thank you, Reverend Nakai. And Reverend Nariaki Hayashi, who is the resident minister of Ekoji Buddhist Temple, which is in Fairfax Station, Virginia, which is near Washington, D.C. And he was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, but raised in Kyoto, Japan, and comes from a temple family whose roots are in Kagoshima, Japan. And Reverend Hayashi has been the resident minister of Ekoji Buddhist Temple since 2016. He also oversees Seabrook Buddhist Temple. Thank you, Sensei. And last but not least, Reverend Yoshimichi Ouchi, who is a resident minister of Toronto Buddhist Church, was born in Oita Prefecture in Japan and grew up in a family temple, which goes back 25 generations in the family temple. And he has many very highly achieved specialty license in the tradition, especially in Jodo Shinshu rituals. If you were part of the service this morning, we're able to experience his chanting. And Reverend Ouchi has been the resident minister at Toronto Buddhist Church since 2016 as well. So our first question that I'd like to pose to each of you, and we'll kind of give you each an opportunity to answer, is more of kind of an introductory round of questions, which is just more of finding out more a little bit about you. And it's how did you decide and who influenced you into becoming a minister? And if we could start with Reverend Ron.
How and why did I become a minister? I was in college at University of California at Davis after high school, and I started off in the School of Engineering and nearly flunked out and went into liberal arts and ended up a history major. And I realized my second year in college, I didn't want to be a school teacher. So what else could I do? I became active in the YBA, the Young Buddhist Association, locally at Placer, my hometown, home church at the time, and then the district, Northern Cal District, and then the Western Young Buddhist League. Well, at the time was quite a large organization. And my third year in college is when the Institute of Buddhist Studies reorganized and bought a building in Berkeley, and they said you could train to be a minister in English. You don't have to go to Japan. And I said, well, that might be interesting. I don't have to be a school teacher. So ended up interviewing with, at the time, the director was Reverend Miyamura, who went on to be Bishop of Hawaii, His daughter was a student at UC Davis in our campus YBA. So I asked Marty if next time your dad's in town, can I talk to him? And interviewed with Reverend Imamura and Mrs. Imamura in a coffee shop at Davis. The following fall, I went off to the Institute of Buddhist Studies. No great personal influence. It was just Buddhism became an interest. I was not a regular at the church or anything, but it just seemed like something interesting. I wanted to study, and off I went to the Institute of Buddhist Studies. The program there wasn't taking off, ended up going to Japan, which was really a different experience again. Without speaking Japanese, it was a struggle, to say the least. And the rest, as they say, just fell into place. Reverend Patty.
Okay, so in my case, ordination and becoming minister were two different events. I went to Japan after studying with Dr. Juanetta here at this temple. I wanted to study Buddhism more, and he encouraged me to go to Japan. He said American universities treat Buddhism as an objective course of study, and he felt that if you go to Japan, you'll learn from people who truly are in the Buddhist path. They're not looking at it from the outside. So having had 2 years of Japanese in university, at least it gave me a grounding in grammar and using a dictionary. So as long as you know how to use a dictionary, you build your vocabulary. So I went to Otani University, and some of you know the name Wayne Yokoyama. He's translated many books, not only for Higashi, but for Nishi Honganji as well, like the Takeko Kujo book, I think many of you have read. And he said, well, you're taking the same courses as someone in the ordination program, so why don't you go for ordination? I said, well, I don't want to be a minister. And I said, well, I'd like to be a translator like you. But he said, well, he has Kyoshi, the full ordination, and he said it's a very helpful credential to have if you want to translate Buddhist Jodo Shinshu texts. So taking his advice, I went into the Kyoshi program and became a Kyoshi. I ended up at the Los Angeles Higashi Honganji Temple, and Reverend Saito, Gyoko Saito, who was a bishop at the time, he did use me as a translator. Except for Noriaki Ito, who's now the bishop, all the other ministers were Japanese speaking, so I would translate their articles for the bulletin. So he did use me as a translator in that way. But also, he wanted me to get a taste of being a minister. So I did sit on the Naijin every Sunday and chanted, and he had me do Dharma talk and participate in funerals and weddings. So I got a little taste of, but the whole time I was working full-time in banking and just helping out on the weekend. So when I moved to Chicago in 1995, it was my idea to also continue working full-time in the business world and just helping the temple on the weekends here and there. But then as the minister here, Reverend Ashikaga, was getting set to retire, we did try out 2 ministers from Japan that didn't work out. And so the temple asked if I would consider becoming the full-time resident minister. And I have to say, it's Reverend Ron that really kind of tipped me over to consider it. I really was reluctant. And we had coffee together, and he told me, if you have a vision for the temple or for Jodo Shinshu, being the resident minister would give you a position to realize your vision. And that's what I remember he said to me, and that kind of tipped me over towards accepting the minister job. So I became the full-time minister in 2013, and I became Kaikyoshi then. Up until then, I was ordained, but not a Kaikyoshi. So that's my 2-step process, just getting ordained first and then becoming a Kaikyoshi 9 years ago.
Thank you, Sensei. So it's Reverend Ron's fault, is what you're saying. That which is a good thing. Thank you. So Reverend Hayashi.
Yes, so I was born in Hawaii. Actually, my father was an overseas minister. He's now, he retired and he's back at our home temple in Japan right now. And I did not originally intend to become a minister. So after graduating college, I worked as a bridal coordinator, a wedding coordinator. And still I was not thinking to become a Buddhist minister. But in Japan, there's this tradition that the first son usually takes over the father's job. Always inherits the father's job. And I have an older brother, but he refused to become a minister because he had a dream, which he made it come true. And he's very successful right now. But in any case, he didn't want to become a minister. And since that tradition goes on, if the first son refuses, then it goes to the next son. So the responsibility, goes to the next son. So it was technically me. But what was interesting was that even he wanted to follow that tradition. My father wanted to follow the tradition. He didn't push me hard. He didn't I don't even remember being encouraged to take over the job. And I think he was very desperate. But still, he was like, do whatever you want, do something, you believe in. But actually, that made me curious. So I started to wonder, what my father was doing as his job. What was it like to be, a minister, especially in Hawaii? So all those questions came into my mind, and that's actually when I started to study Buddhism. So I just quit my job, and then I went to the Buddhist seminary. And since my father was an overseas minister as well, I became a overseas minister and technically came back to the United States. So I think I made my father's journey into my journey. So it's not like I'm not walking my own journey, but I'm kind of walking my father's journey, trying to understand what he has been to. And now it's my 6th year at Ekoji Buddhist Temple.
Thank you, Sensei. Oichi Sensei.
Yep. I am a second son, so I was kicked out from my family temple. Okay. Actually, my older brother, he's taking the family temple. But when I was a child, I wanted to become a Buddhist minister through my grandfather. So he was great. He's still alive. But he was great Buddhist minister. And just as a child wants to be a professional baseball player or a professional soccer player, so I just wanted to become not professional, but a Buddhist minister like my grandfather when I was a child. And when I went to the high school, I learned my father's background, and he was a Kaikyoshi minister in Sacramento. And he got married with my mother and went back to Japan. So my brother was born in America, and he had a American passport, which is so good. But unfortunately, I was born in Japan. So when I was in the university student, I went to Zen temple to do Zazen every Sunday for 2 or 3 years, because I wanted to learn other teachings. But when I met Reverend Teramoto, who was a resident minister in Osaka Prefecture at local temple, and I studied or worked under him, and he was changed my life was changed to become a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist minister, because when he talked talk to others about Amida Buddha's primal vow and teaching of the Shinran Shoni, he really enjoyed sharing his Dharma talk because he sincerely liked the Nembut's life or Nembut's teaching from the bottom of his heart. And I was moved his behavior, and I wanted to become like him. And then I met Aoki Sensei. He was a Vancouver Buddhist Temple resident minister, but now he's a Socho. So then I contact him, and he asked me, "Do you want to become a Kaikyoshi?" And I said yes. But he didn't hire me soon. He checked my Facebook account or what I wrote, and for 4 years or 5 years, I didn't know he looked at my Facebook page. But when he visited Japan, he called me at the hotel at the lobby, and we drink coffee, and he asked me again, "Do you want to become a Kaikyoshi still?" And I said yes. That is why I've studied Shin Buddhism so hard at Chuo Bukyogakuin Ryukoku University and Gonshiki Shidaiji. And I came here 2016 at Shin Church.
Thank you, senseis, for your sharing your story, individual stories. For our next question, we'll start with Reverend Nakai, and this is a little more about what's happening in our world right now and how we're all affected by the pandemic, which is of course why we're on Zoom here at the moment. And of course, because of the pandemic, we really had a shift in our temples and what we've been doing. So, can you share what you've learned about yourself and your temple during the pandemic? But also, what do you think will be your focus moving forward through and beyond the pandemic? Reverend Nakai?
Yeah, so just like everybody else, as soon as the lockdown started, we shifted to Zoom, our Sunday services, and I did it out of my house up until July of 2020. And then from July of 2020, we've been open, but still streaming. And one of the things I found out is Zoom is very tiring. Doing online streaming is very tiring. Just like yesterday, I'm pretty much dead after watching everything. So it's not just when you're a presenter, but even when you're a part, just sitting in on Zoom sessions. So I started out 2020 doing a lot of Zoom stuff, but I really cut back a lot. And I'm glad to get back to some in-person events. But I guess going forward, it just does, I think all of us has realized there is something about online presence that gives you an outreach that you normally don't have when you depend on in-person things. So I don't have any concrete plans, but I want to know what is going to work in the future. That maybe Sunday morning in-person services is not the way to go. Maybe we have to make ourselves available online, like podcasts or in videos and stuff like that. So I don't have any specific plans, but I realize we do have to make some changes if we want to go forward.
Reverend Hayashi?
So this is, it's not something just by about myself and our temple, but when you see the world as the totality of the world, I always was thinking, or I realized, how we kind of, tend to make like extreme judgments, especially when when this pandemic started. And this is something, I have been always thinking, since the pandemic, especially after seeing, all the political divisions and discriminations and conflicts that's going on right now. I think it's our nature that, when we see something, we often make like absolute separations, and we set, things in oppositions, like, right and wrong, good and bad, black and white. And, this is how we so we do this. We mix oppositions to make it easier for us to understand. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. But what Buddha teaches is, the main problem is that we not only make those, extreme, we not only set things in oppositions, but we also take an extreme position on one side or the other. And I think that's precisely what's happening right now, because we tend to think that, our justice is the true justice and, our right is the only right. And I believe, as thinking beings, we can empathize with those we oppose and understand that, they are as human as we are, but we often fail to do so because of, our unawareness. And when we see on the, the news during this pandemic, there's all these conflicts. I think, one crucial key is this, a way to deal with this unawareness. So as we move forward through and beyond the pandemic, I think, one crucial key is to gain our awareness of, our nature of who we are.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Ochi?
Yep. So what I learned during the pandemic, the importance of the Sangha committee. So before pandemic, I used to visit senior homes or senior house, nursing homes, like once a month. So, but today I cannot visit there, and some senior member told me they feel so lonely. So, because even though I connect to Zoom and talk with them, there is so much distance they feel. And before pandemic, there was people in the temple all the time because of the Buddhist service, Taiko practice, bazaar, preparing the Kedoka event, and lot of meetings. So meeting face to face is very important, as you know. For example, when we gather together for a meeting, we talk not only about the current content of the meeting, but also there was private conversation in the meeting. So therefore, we always prepare the cookie, coffee, chips, and sometimes onigiri and tsukemono on the meeting tables. So the only problem with this that is makes the meeting take longer. So I wanna go back home soon, but we enjoy the meeting, so it takes longer. So our temple is and now for the future, our temple is creating a new website now because when we ask someone who visited our temple for the first time, who came here for the first time, how they know our temple, they always said internet. They found our internet. So unfortunately, my generation, like around 30 years old, doesn't come to the temple often. So we invite them to our website creating team. So they work so hard for the temple now, and they have some many ideas to improve our sangha. So I realized if a temple gives them a responsibility and roles, even though they don't come to the temple often, they're enjoying helping us so much and start coming to the temple. But we should not forget to prepare snack and onigiri for them when we open the temple doors. And also, social media SNS like Instagram, Facebook, or website, we should use it more. And again, like my generation study years, they help us a lot and provide the teaching of the Buddha to others who doesn't come to the temple, to the internet.
Thank you, Sensei. So, Reverend Miyamura? You're still muted.
Of course, the pandemic has taught us a great deal. certainly the Zoom, Facebook, internet phenomena is good and bad, of course. The Dharma surfing that goes on is phenomenal. You can hear and see ministers, teachers from around the world, not just around the country, which certainly has been good, beneficial. The number of people that watch our Facebook Live weekly, always surpasses the number of in-person people who would have come to service. But yeah, I agree with Reverend Patty. Of course, many of us are zoomed out, Zoom overload. But going forward, where we are in the future going to have to deal with and how to be hybrid, and what that means, and what equipment and how we present ourselves will be critical. But yeah, definitely we are in the internet age. Our website, our social media presence, all will be even more important going forward. Yeah, I wish I could predict, how things were going to end up. But yeah, there's no way of predicting, I think, how the role of the temples will change.
Thank you, Sensei. This next question, we'll be starting with Reverend Hayashi, just to give you a heads up. But, it's a little more complex and a little longer of a question, so bear with me here. And it's particularly poignant for those of us here in Minneapolis in our Sangha. This has particular meaning. In Minneapolis here, we've been very deeply affected by so many tragic events, and that continue to happen, that are of course in national news. And in light of the current events, such as like the murders of George Floyd and so many others, and these are I would call events highlighting the disparities related to marginalized communities. Excuse me. And the fact that like our temple histories coming from the Japanese American World War II experience, and the generational trauma that still is apparent. How as ministers can you or have you helped your Sangha understand and deal with these issues and the social unrest? And also, if you can comment on, is the Jodo Shinshu Temple a space to help our members navigate this? And if so, how? And lastly, how do you see our temples or Buddhism in general as a source of influence in the world in things like this? Reverend Hayashi.
So my answer kind of links to what I just said previously about, this gaining awareness. And awareness comes from a self-reflection, and in Buddhism, in the Buddhist teachings, the importance of self-reflection is emphasized. It's in the Nikaya Sutra that to learn the Dharma is to learn yourself. To learn yourself is to learn the Dharma. So, Buddhism is aimed to understand, who us, and build that awareness. And so, we have seen the tragedy, all sorts of tragedy, starting from the murder of George Floyd and other people, and also the discrimination, especially against Black people. But I think it's really important for us to understand that all those problems, are not limited to those who were involved in those incidents, but it is a problem for all of us. So, this is when the self-reflection becomes important, which means to, analyze how we think, how we talk, and how we act. And so one thing we learn from the self-reflection is how we all actually have prejudice, how we all are all, biased. So in the case of the Black Lives Matter, we know the importance of supporting this movement, from TV, radio, and newspapers. But I think it's important for us to take it, personally, and even more. This always comes to my, this question comes to my mind, but so do we reflect on how, if we do not discriminate against Black people, there are people against whom we do discriminate? And, do we understand how the conflicts we create in our personal lives are no less wrong than those who discriminate against Black people? So we all, as Shinan says, we all have the tendency, we all have these blind desires, we all have, prejudice and bias, and ultimately we cannot, free ourselves from them. But I believe there is a big difference between those who self-reflect and those who do not. So, like a person who does not self-reflect will clinch to their justice and righteousness, as I said previously. This will give birth only to conflict and hatred. Only hatreds are born. But those who do reflect, self-reflect, will try to listen and understand other viewpoints. They will not only try to listen and understand that others may have their viewpoints, but also they'll see those other viewpoints as valid as their own. And at this point, the reason for conflict disappears. So, we're in the pandemic, there's all sorts of things going on, other conflicts. So we may not be able to change, other people's view, but we can certainly change our attitude towards them. So this, self-reflection is crucial. And this is what Shakyamuni Buddha has been, emphasizing. And more importantly, it is crucial for me, myself, to, practice.
Thank you, Sensei. Before we go to Reverend Ouchi, I forgot to mention that in this round of questions or answers, after you each respond, we'd like to give you each another maybe a minute or so to add anything to your response after you hear everybody else, or if you want to address each other, purely up to you, or give you that opportunity anyway. So Reverend Ouchi.
Yep, I totally agree with Heish Sensei. Like we have to listen to others before we decide or judge something, and we cannot change others, but we can change ourselves. And I want to share my thought, like how temple can help someone who has a mind issue. Like before pandemic, I was usually asked to hold a makuradio service, like bedside service in the hospital or their house around like 5 times a year. But during the pandemic, 3 families asked me to hold the makuradio service because one of their family members decided to choose euthanasia, like take a medicine and decide to go to the funeral or pass away. So I believe they are not outside of their community because their family and friends helped and supported him or her so much. But sometimes people think they don't or cannot belong to anywhere and feel so lonely. And when I thought about what I can do for them who decide to take a medicine to pass away, so it was hard to find a word for them. But when I visit hospital or their house, I always hear the Nembutsu from their mouth when I visit. So I realized that Jodo Shinshu minister or temple should give a space or make an occasion to recite Nembutsu together, not only in the temple, but also in their house, hospital, or outside like a park. And also, I believe we must help others. We must help I believe, sorry. I believe we must help ourselves or yourself or myself first before we help others. Of course, we should reach out to others and help outside of the uh, help people who doesn't belong to the temple. But I always ask ask myself that if there is someone need help from my temple sangha member, we should help them first. Like for example, I received a phone call from a temple member last year. She came to attend the service, came to temple to attend the service on every Sunday before pandemic, and she helped and did volunteer for the temple a lot. So she asked me, she want to help others who had never visited our temple. But I knew there were great issues in her own family. So her children didn't speak to her, and her husband always go outside, and she was so lonely in the house. So I wanted her to help her kids or husband first. Then we can help temple members or others, I think.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Ron, you're muted.
Yeah, this is a tough question, obviously. In light of all the I guess human rights issues that are out there, and the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the others, Black Lives Matter, all these are issues that are really human rights issues. And I guess that is the threshold, that I use, rather than political or social issues. But are they human rights issues? And when they are human rights issues, then we have a responsibility to take part in it, to do something about it. And yes, there is space, within the temple to dialogue, to be able to have different viewpoints. It is not a one-way street. We have temple members who are vaccinated, double vaccinated, and boosted. There are other temple members who will not get vaccinated. They definitely have, or should have a space, at the temple. We're not one way or the other. It is not a political issue to the temple or its members. The choices that people make, we have to respect. But the human rights issues of how those things affect all of us, not just the people directly involved, that becomes how we need to look at how we go forward in the world we live in. I forgot what it's called. What Toronto reads instead of the pledge is that Lamonshu's new pledge, I guess. But it ends with, in how we live in our society, the responsibility we have to society. And this definitely is part of the dialogue that should be going on in our spaces.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Nakai.
Yeah, when I read those questions, I couldn't help feeling like it's the whole thing kind of touches on my own frustration, that there are all these things going on. I wish I could speak like Reverend Hayashi about being even-minded about, open-minded about opposing views. So in my case, I can only speak in very general terms. One of the themes I've been doing with Dharma School is collective karma, just trying my kids, just like the Golden Chain says, that we're all interconnected. And collective karma is opposed to, sometimes the Golden Chain gives the idea that what I do only affects my happiness and misery, but actually what I do affects the happiness and misery of all the lives around me, and vice versa. What they do affects my life as well. So I've been just trying to talk about those very general principles for us to be mindful of, that we are interconnected, and these things that happen, we have a part in, and we also, what happens to us is caused by what else is going on in the world. So I've been speaking those very general terms. So for myself, I don't feel my particular temple is a place to navigate a lot of the things I'm going through concerning these issues and what I should or could be doing. And my temple members are telling you that I've dropped them from my social media, my Facebook page. I've pretty much banned all my temple members from being my friends. I do have curated posts where I only show certain people what I'm going through and what I'm thinking. So I become very guarded in that sense. I have my own views and things I want to take action on, but it's not public to the temple, and I don't feel talking at the temple or with temple members about some of those things, my concerns. So so that's why I really, when I listen to Reverend Hayashi, I wish I could talk that way, but I don't feel I can. The best I can do is just in very general terms talk about our interconnection. So thank you.
If we could maybe go around once again and offer you the opportunity to respond again to anything anybody else said, or any further thoughts that each of you may have. You can, and also no additional comments is also an okay response too, if you don't have anything else to say. So I'll start with Reverend Hayashi again.
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Reverend Ochi said, that it's our nature that we want to help others, we want to please others, but sometimes we go too far. So, as Reverend Ochi said, that you have to take care of yourself. So it's like that, the oxygen mask of, on the aircraft. They would explain that, please securely put your mask on first before helping others. So I think that's kind of the attitude. I mean, you can't help others if you're wounded. You can't help others when you are having so much difficulties in your life. But more importantly, I think, it's always a balance. You have to take care of yourselves, but at the same time, you have to take care of others, because as Reverend Patty said, we are interconnected. So, in that sense, we have to be always aware of if we're going too far or not. Always, examine yourself. And when you find that you're going too far, that's when you have to stop and pause. And I think, the temple is really helpful, whether you are in person or virtual. It doesn't matter, because it provides that pause to kind of think of, what happened throughout that week, so that you could, find out, okay, then I should be careful of this as I enter my new week. So that moment of reflection is, I think, is very important. And that's one reason why we have to keep on listening to the Dharma every week, why we should, attend the service every week.
Thank you, Sensei. Oichi Sensei.
Yep, it was very difficult question, and like Ron Sensei talked about human rights, and for example, the vaccine. Like when Canada started we started getting vaccine, like many temple members asked me, "Did you get vaccine?" And I said, "Not yet." When are you gonna get the vaccine? And when I get it, which company did you get vaccine? And I said Pfizer. And are you gonna get the Moderna next time? And did you book already? So it's like, they worried about me. So it's their compassion. But I thought, please stop asking about vaccine. I want to start the Sunday service soon. Like it's kind of harassment. Like where, what kind of? So sometimes we always listen to the Buddha's compassion all the time. So Buddha's wisdom and compassion. But so I think we also have to think about what is our compassion sometimes. What is our kindness? What is our compassion? What is our love? So sometimes compassion attacked, not attacked, but offends others sometimes. So yeah, we have to. I think I have to careful myself.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Ron?
No, I have nothing to add on the second round. Well, maybe I will. Okay. um, it is also our nature to judge, but that is human, and we have to recognize it as such. It's not good or bad, it's just being human. And so we do what we have to do because we know it is the right thing for me to do. And that's when we take stands and when we take unpopular sometimes positions. But the Dharma teaches us to do that when the time is right. It's not all the time. It's not necessarily when one wants to or doesn't want to. It has to depend on the situation and when it is the thing to do. So yeah, in my past that has happened at various times, and yeah, you just do what you have to do sometimes. And the Dharma is very forgiving, fortunately. Patty, if you have anything to add.
No, that's so it's very true. We all are individuals and we do what makes sense to us at that time. And so that's what one of the things in our temple, I tell people that, yeah, we don't as a temple endorse this or that position. Everybody's different. And I even tell our temple members, you do what you think is going to be the right thing. But it is frustrating for me that my own personal stance, I don't feel comfortable revealing them at the temple to the temple members. It's kind of a weird situation to be in, but I realize there is a responsibility that things I might say or do might be taken as a temple action, and it's really just my individual action.
Thank you, senseis. So we're not quite to the end of the time that I was planning to move to Q&A. So I'm going to take the opportunity to interject one more question from us. But in the meantime, anybody who, if you have a question, you want to place it in chat, feel free to do so, and Cheryl will keep an eye on that. But I'm just going to ask you maybe it may be difficult to do a short answer for this, but as we think about our temples and shrinking membership and the changes going on, how can Jodo Shinshu be relevant to current and future generations? If you have an opinion, that's keep it under 30 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. We'll start with, I forgot where we were. Reverend
Ochin would be next.
Reverend Ouchi.
Thank you, Ron Sensei. I really appreciate. I think sometime I receive phone call from non-temple members, and they always ask me like a very difficult question, and they want me to answer their question. Like answer, they need answer, good answer. But today we can find out many answers in the Google, like internet. So, and when I worked in the local temple in Osaka, my sensei, he had never give me the answer. He always give me the question. What do you think? What do you think? Why did you think? And then he sometimes gave me the hint how to think about it. So, in the temple, I think we can share the Buddha's teaching and kind of answer, but I would like to think about what is the teaching of the Buddha, what is the Shinjin, what is why we are here, and who we are with Sangha members. So and we find a hint from the Kyoyo Shinsho or Shinran's books and think about it together. So then I believe like a young generation, I hope they're gonna join us and think about many things together, not like sharing only answers.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Ron.
What was the question again?
How can Jodo Shinshu be relevant to current and future generations, like young people like Reverend Ouchi?
Yeah. Yeah, I was buying time. Boy, that is really the question that's out there for the future. The millennial generation in general, are not joiners, but so do we need, I don't want to say we need to change the temple to accommodate them. That doesn't make enough sense either. But how to appeal to them to join and participate in the temple. So joining the temple means, for lack, the reality is we need dollars and cents. We need to keep the doors open. The financial basis, what is the financial basis of the temple in the future? And boy, no one has the answer. Are brick and mortar temples a thing of the past? That's a very important question for all of us. Are the temples too big? Do we just need a storefront? Are we going to be all online and all virtual? I don't have the answers, and I'll be retired before those things have to be decided. So Hashi and Ouchi will have to deal with after my retirement. But those are the kinds of things that we look in the future and we don't have the answer. And we shouldn't be afraid that we don't have the answer. We have to go to that place, adjust to what is happening at the time. So yeah, that's part. Buddhism teaches us change, right? Change. Everything changes. Oh, but we don't want to live it. That's enough.
Before we go on, just speaking purely from a Sangha that doesn't have brick and mortar. So I realize the reality of all of you. You have temples that have financial concerns, but we don't have the financial concerns that you're referring to. We want to know, we would like to know more about like, how do we make the teachings? I mean, the teachings are the teachings, but how are the teachings, how will they resonate to the generations of today?
Oh, can I respond to that real quick before we go on? The key to it is translation. We have to quit translating. We need and we're not quit translating. We need more translations, no doubt. Instead of 5 translations of Kyogyo Shinsho, we should have 100. We need that. But what we need is the language that resonates in English. I like a few phrases that I've heard. Reverend Akahoshi uses Shinshu is a religion of thank you. Shinshu is a religion of please. Excuse me, I was wrong. Never mind, start again. Shinshu is a religion of thank you. Other religions are a religion of please. They want something. It makes sense when we say it that way, not a complicated way. Reverend Bob Oshita, in his thing, he says, Namu Amida Butsu, with gratitude and kindness beyond words. So those phrases like that resonate with people. At least it does with me, and I think with others. Come as you are is a phrase I use. We don't have to say, the parable of the 2 rivers and the wide path, and this is come as you are. No, just come as you are. We don't need the long. We have to find those things that resonate in English going forward, and not just a translation. Yes. Pat.
Yeah, so I think in the question, it's really Jodo Shinshu. I mean, in a big city like Chicago, if people want Buddhism, there's like hundreds of places they could go for Buddhism. But for us in MBT, Jodo Shinshu, or at least for us, I feel Jodo Shinshu has such a unique presentation of Buddhism that I think is very helpful. And one of the things that's helpful for one of the great values of Shinran and his teaching is really examining the self. Too much of our society is about, you deserve it, you should go out and splurge, I don't know, all these phrases of materialism and self-satisfaction at the expense of others. And so I think more than, just personally, more than other Buddhist teaching, we really need Shinran's teachings now. Those teachings that make us question our selfish desires and make us open our hearts to be open to the concerns of others. And the other Buddhist groups, it's just so much self-improvement, just go out for your own piece of peace and not talking about these things like in Jodo Shinshu, about community and mutual helping each other. And we see our older Japanese Americans, they live that sense of okage-sama de, of being, realizing you're receiving these great benefits instead of you're like around, you want, you're going for it. There's that sense of knowing that you're recipient of all these great. So there's something about Jodo Shinshu. I hope we do survive into the future, because we, more than other Buddhist groups, really have this message to counteract that self-centeredness so prevalent in our society.
Thank you, Sensei. Reverend Hayashi.
So what I especially like about Buddhism is that Buddhism does not, as Reverend Ochi said, does not give you a clear answer. And I do believe that especially now people need Buddhism. I'm not saying that people should convert to Buddhism, but I'm just saying that people should be aware of how Buddhism sees the world, because I don't know about all religions, but some religions they give you like a clear guidance and tell you what is right to do and what is wrong to do. But Buddhism doesn't do that, because Buddhism is based on the concept of middle way, to avoid extremes. Because what I think is right may be wrong to others, and others, their right may be wrong to me. So then what is that right? It's really hard to tell. And once you understand that yes, you have your righteousness, but if you're not sure that that's right, then that kind of opens up your mind, and you start to listen to others and kind of talk of other people's righteousness. And speaking of Jodo Shinshu in particular, I think one key point that is important in Jodo Shinshu, Pure Land Buddhism, is in the inconceivability nature of Amida. So, Amida is spoken in the largest sutra, but it is basically something that we cannot understand through our logic and reason. So Shinran, he emphasizes the inconceivable nature of Amida. So basically we cannot, it goes beyond our conception and description and logic. But I think that that inconceivable nature is what takes us beyond our calculation. It kind of transcends our thoughts, and I think that's the moment that we can experience liberation, if that's a right word. We can experience a liberation from this absolute I that is unaware of the interconnectedness of life, so that that inconceivable is where we can transcend our thoughts. And that's what, for me, that's what Amida is providing. Yes. And I think this is not only the next generation, but especially us right now. We need these two concepts, the middle way and the inconceivable.